The night sky pulsed with a haunting orange glow as flames licked the edges of our roof, crackling like the wrath of something ancient and merciless. Screams tore through the stillness, mine, my neighbor's, and somewhere inside, the faint, desperate cry of my daughter. The scent of burning wood and melting plastic filled the air, thick and choking, as if the house itself was suffocating. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder but never fast enough. I was 5 minutes away when the call came in, just 5. The neighbor's voice on the phone was panicked. "Your house, it's on fire. Your daughter, she's inside." My heart collapsed. I sped back like a madman, barely seeing the road, praying, screaming, pleading with God to freeze time. But time didn't listen. When I reached the cul-de-sac, the entire front of the house was engulfed in flame, illuminating the horror for the whole neighborhood to see. Firefighters swarmed the scene, but when I ran forward, I was grabbed and held back, their arms locking me in place. "You can't go in there," one of them shouted. "It's too dangerous." I didn't care. My daughter was in there. My baby. Trapped. Disabled. Alone. I screamed her name over and over until my voice was raw. Then, for one brief moment, everything stopped. I heard her. Faint. Screaming from inside. Her voice wasn't loud anymore, but it was enough to rip my soul apart. "Daddy," the roof groaned, the front window shattered, and smoke belched out like a monster claiming victory. I felt myself collapse to my knees. And then I saw her, Karen, standing across the street. Her arms crossed. A smirk. A damn smirk. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shocked. She wasn't running to help. She was watching, like a director enjoying her masterpiece. That's when I knew. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't faulty wiring. It wasn't just bad luck. This fire, this nightmare, wasn't just some tragic twist of fate. No, this was deliberate. Someone had set our house on fire. Someone had watched it burn. And my disabled daughter was still inside when they did it. And the person who made it happen was standing right in front of me, basking in the flames. This wasn't just arson. It was personal. It was evil. And it was planned. Before the fire reduced everything to ash, our life was quiet, peaceful even. We had moved into that neighborhood 3 years ago with hope in our hearts and boxes full of dreams. It wasn't just a house, it was the house. The one we imagined watching our daughter grow up in, nestled at the end of a charming cul-de-sac where neighbors waved, dogs barked softly behind fences, and holiday decorations felt like a community tradition. Our daughter, Emily, was born with cerebral palsy. Her movements were limited, and she used a specialized wheelchair and therapy equipment that became part of our everyday rhythm. But none of it ever stopped her from smiling. She had the kind of spirit that made strangers fall silent, not from pity, but awe. That girl lit up every room she entered. And so, when we found the house with the wide doorways, the accessible bathroom, and the peaceful front lawn with an old maple tree out front, it felt like divine alignment. We poured our savings into it. We told ourselves we'd finally found a place where Emily could just be safe, happy, home. The HOA had seemed standard enough, just a board of locals managing neighborhood upkeep, landscaping, and the occasional newsletter. We weren't worried. They spoke politely at our first meeting, handed us a packet of rules and expectations, and even welcomed Emily with a small gift basket. I remember my wife smiling, saying, "This might actually be perfect." And for a while it was. We met other families, joined the neighborhood potluck, set up Emily's therapy corner by the window. She loved waving at joggers and watching squirrels race through the trees. Our weekends were filled with therapy appointments, grocery runs, and lazy afternoons on the porch swing. Life felt normal. Then we met Karen. She lived 2 doors down in a perfectly trimmed house with roses so symmetrical they looked artificial. Her lawn was always clipped with military precision, her windows spotless. The first time we spoke, she walked up as I was adjusting the angle of Emily's new ramp. She didn't smile, didn't introduce herself, just stared at the ramp and said, "That's not HOA approved, you know?" I blinked, caught off guard. "It's for my daughter. She interrupted, I don't care what it's for. There are rules for a reason. Then she turned and walked off. No, welcome to the neighborhood, no hello. Just that warning and a weird little smirk. The kind that chills your spine, but you brush off because surely no one could really be that cruel. Over time, her presence became more intentional. Complaints started trickling in. The HOA sent us letters about our mailbox being an inch too tall, our trash bins being visible from the road, Emily's wheelchair leaving marks on the sidewalk. At first, we thought it was just overzealous administration. But then came the notes on our door. Handwritten, anonymous, but unmistakably hers. Your decorations are tacky. Children with special needs should be kept inside during events. Why should the rest of us suffer for your family's challenges? I wanted to confront her. I wanted to scream. But my wife always said, let's just ignore her. Emily doesn't need more stress. So we tried. Still, the incidents continued. Someone slashed the tires of our therapy van. Our security camera wires were cut one night. Emily's toys, left out in the backyard, were found shattered. We reported everything, but without proof, the police just nodded and moved on. Could be teenagers, they said. Could be coincidence. But deep down, I knew. I could feel her eyes on us during HOA meetings. I'd catch her watching from her porch as Emily laughed in her wheelchair. On sunny days, there was always that same expression, bitterness twisted with satisfaction, like our happiness was something she wanted to erase. Things escalated when we requested permission to build a small, accessible play structure in our backyard. A swing and sensory wall. Nothing fancy. The HOA denied us, unanimously. The same HOA that had approved dozens of backyard sheds and trampolines for other families. That's when it clicked. Karen wasn't just mean. She had influence. She controlled the HOA like a puppeteer pulling strings. And anyone who didn't fall in line was quietly squeezed out through fines, code violations, or relentless pressure. We should have moved. We talked about it more than once. But every time we looked at Emily's room, at the therapy setup, at the friends she'd made in her special education program nearby, we hesitated. We told ourselves Karen was just a bitter woman with too much time on her hands, that we could wait her out. That bullies only win if you run. And besides, we had done nothing wrong. Why should we be the ones to leave? But that was before the fire. Before we understood just how far Karen was willing to go to get what she wanted. Before we realized what kind of evil we were living next to. Because truth is, monsters don't always hide under the bed. Sometimes they live 2 doors down. And sometimes they smile while your world burns. It started small, just enough to make us uncomfortable, but not enough to prove anything. Karen's complaints began to multiply. First, it was the wooden wheelchair ramp in the front yard. It doesn't match the neighborhood aesthetic, she barked during an HOA meeting, even though we had stained it to blend with the porch and kept it perfectly maintained. Then it was our mobility van. Too large for the driveway, she claimed, hurts the view for everyone else. She circulated a petition to ban vans over a certain size from being parked overnight, a thinly veiled attack aimed directly at us. The worst part? The HOA passed it. We were forced to park our daughter's van down the street, making it harder to load her, especially on rainy days. She cried the first night we had to wheel her down the sidewalk in a storm, wrapped in a poncho, soaked to the bone. Then came the noise complaints. Not parties, not loud music, just laughter. Emily's therapy involved guided play, music, and voice exercises to help her with motor skills and speech. Karen complained that it was disruptive, that it echoed, that disabled children shouldn't be allowed to shriek like that in public. She began filming our backyard during Emily's sessions, arms folded, standing in her garden, phone camera pointed like a weapon. Our therapists were visibly shaken. One even quit. Another insisted we move all future sessions indoors. We adapted, but the damage was done. Emily became more reserved, quiet, unsure why her joy was now something to hide. Our mailbox was suddenly too close to the curb. Our porch plants were not uniform. We received violation notices for things like leaving toys outside, having a garden wind chime, even for Emily's therapy dog barking once during a thunderstorm. It was relentless. Every time we fixed something, another complaint arrived, and every time we protested, the HOA backed her. Not once did they come to see for themselves. Not once did they listen to us. Karen had power, and she was weaponizing it rule by rule, inch by inch to crush our will. We filed police reports when our backyard was vandalized. Emily's sensory wall had been ripped off the fence, its painted tiles shattered. Her custom swing disappeared. The officer who arrived just sighed. Could be kids, he said. No cameras, no suspects. He was gone in 5 minutes. A week later, someone poured motor oil down our ramp. Emily nearly slipped when we wheeled her down for her school transport. That night, I installed hidden cameras. I was done hoping the system would protect us. I was going to protect my daughter myself. At 2:43 a.m. on a Thursday, the camera caught something, a figure, small, cloaked in a hood, creeping through our side yard. The footage was grainy, but the gait was unmistakable. Karen. She moved like she belonged there. Like this was routine. She approached the porch, looked around, and bent down near the flower bed. Then she stood up, paused, and stared directly at the camera, as if she knew, as if she wanted us to see. Then she turned and vanished into the shadows. I watched it over and over, while rising in my throat. I called the police again, showed them the footage. The officer blinked. That's not conclusive, he said. You can't see her face clearly. He didn't even file a report. My wife was terrified. She's not just trying to scare us, she said. She wants to break us. And I believed it. Karen wasn't just annoyed by us. She was obsessed. It was like our daughter's existence offended her. Like the fact that we didn't hide Emily away, didn't apologize for needing accessibility, made her furious. I caught her whispering to neighbors, pointing at our house during morning walks, laughing with her HOA cronies while we loaded Emily's equipment into the van. It was like living in a glass house under a magnifying glass, every movement scrutinized, every breath judged. One evening, we came home to find our back gate wide open. The therapy dog was missing. Panic turned our blood cold. We searched the neighborhood for hours. It was Emily who found him, tied to a tree in Karen's yard with a note, "Control your animal." The leash was so tight the poor dog's neck was bruised. We confronted her. She smiled. Must have gotten in my yard. Maybe you should check your locks. She closed the door on our faces. No apology. No denial. Just that smile. That sick, twisted satisfaction. We tried to keep things together for Emily. She was sensing our tension, withdrawing, losing sleep. But what do you do when your own home becomes a battleground? When the place meant to give your child safety is the very source of her fear. One morning, I found her staring at the fire extinguisher in the hallway, asking, "Daddy, if the house burns, can I run?" My heart shattered. We bought new locks, reinforced the doors, installed brighter lights. We tried to put on brave faces, but behind the smiles, we were unraveling. Karen had turned our lives into a siege, and she was just getting started. We should have left. We talked about it again and again. Packed boxes made lists, but Emily's therapy network was here. Her school, her friends. Moving felt like admitting defeat. It felt like letting Karen win. And deep down, I still clung to hope. Hope that maybe the HOA would come to their senses, that the police would act, that decency would prevail. But decency doesn't matter to people like Karen. And hope was a luxury we could no longer afford. Because by the time we realized how deep her obsession ran, it was already too late. It began like any ordinary day, almost deceptively peaceful. The sky was clear, the air warm, and Emily had woken up early, humming one of her favorite songs as my wife helped to get dressed. I remember kissing them both goodbye before leaving for the emergency HOA meeting Karen had insisted on. She'd filed yet another complaint, this time about the new security lights we had installed. Too bright, she claimed, ruins the neighborhood's aesthetic. I didn't want to go. Something in me was uneasy, but I told myself it was just exhaustion. The meeting was hostile from the start. Karen led it like a courtroom drama, her tone sharp, her accusations personal. "This family has disrupted our way of life long enough," she said, slapping down papers like evidence in a trial. I argued back, firmly. For once, I didn't hold back. I told them about the vandalism, the harassment, the fear. But Karen was calm, almost smug. She said, "We're all tired. You should consider what's best for your daughter. Maybe somewhere quieter." I left the meeting seething, not realizing I was walking away from a last conversation I'd ever have before everything changed. It was just afternoon when my wife left for a quick trip to the pharmacy. Emily had insisted on staying home with Max, her therapy dog, curled up next to her on the living room couch. The new episode of her favorite show had just started. Nothing unusual. The door was locked, the cameras were on, and she was happy. Around 1:15 p.m., our neighbor's security camera caught a figure near our backyard, someone short, wearing a hoodie, creeping along the side fence. The timestamp was 1:17 p.m. The fire was first noticed by a delivery driver around 1:22 p.m., smoke billowing from under the roof shingles. Within minutes, the house was engulfed. Flames danced in the windows, smoke burst from the attic vents, and Emily's voice, her terrified cries, were faintly audible to those nearby. The fire department was called instantly, but something was wrong. The hydrant across the street, brand new and routinely tested, was bone dry, tampered. The crew lost precious minutes locating another source. In that time, Emily remained trapped inside, unable to move fast enough, the smoke growing thick and merciless. A neighbor, Mr. Bennett, tried to break down the front door, but was driven back by the heat. He later told the police he saw someone watching from a distance, someone standing still, arms crossed. It was Karen, he whispered. I swear. She was just watching, like she was waiting for something. Inside, Emily had managed to pull herself off the couch and crawl toward the door, but the flames cut off every exit. She was coughing, gasping for air, eyes stinging. Max barked nonstop, trying to lead her away from the heat, refusing to leave her side. By the time firefighters broke through, the living room was nearly unrecognizable. They found Max beside her, burned and whimpering, but alive. Emily was unconscious, barely breathing, her lungs filled with smoke, her face pale beneath layers of soot. The fireman who carried her out said later it was the most haunting rescue of his life. She was holding on to that dog like it was her last lifeline, he said, like she knew nobody else was coming. I got the call while racing home, my wife sobbing uncontrollably into the phone. It's Emily. She's in the ambulance. There was a fire. They pulled her out just in time. My heart cracked wide open. I reached the neighborhood in minutes, but it felt like centuries. What greeted me was a nightmare. Flashing lights, scorched siding, the roof caved in. Our memories turned to smoke. And then her, Karen, standing on her porch, arms crossed, calm. No panic, no tears, just stillness. She didn't ask if Emily was okay, didn't even pretend to care. She watched as they loaded my baby into an ambulance as we fell apart in front of her, and she smiled. Not big, not wide, just a small, satisfied curl of the lips. It was brief, calculated, like she had finally won. I confronted her right there, screaming, demanding to know what she'd done, who she really was. She didn't say a word, just tilted her head slightly, like I was nothing more than background noise. The police pulled me away. I couldn't stop yelling. She did this. Look at her. She did this. But there was no proof yet, just suspicion, just the gut-wrenching certainty that she had been waiting for this moment. My daughter, my innocent disabled little girl, nearly died while that woman stood less than 50 feet away and did nothing. Or worse, everything. At the hospital, Emily was placed in intensive care. Severe smoke inhalation, burns on her arms and neck. The doctors said if they'd gotten to her a minute later, she would have suffered brain damage. Or worse. My wife never left her side. I sat in the waiting room, staring at the wall, replaying the meeting, the hoodie in the yard, the broken hydrant, Karen's expression, over and over. And the more I pieced it together, the clearer it became This was no accident. This was the final move in a long, cruel game. Karen had taken our peace, our security, our dignity. And now, she had almost taken our daughter's life. But she underestimated one thing. She didn't just ignite our home. She lit a fire in me. And I was going to make damn sure she paid. The hospital walls were white and cold, but nothing compared to the silence of the ICU. Emily lay there unconscious, covered in burns and tangled in tubes, her chest rising in shallow mechanical rhythm. Machines beeped methodically, indifferent to the weight of our world collapsing. We sat at her bedside for days, my wife clutching Emily's hand like it was the last rope holding her to life, while I stared into space, mind racing through everything that had led to this moment. Our home was gone, reduced to ashes. Nothing left but a blackened frame, melted photo frames, and smoke-stained memories. We were suddenly homeless, living out of a borrowed guest room at a friend's house, waiting for updates, praying for Emily to wake up. When the fire marshal's report came in, the conclusion hit like a slap. Electrical malfunction. Case closed. The words felt hollow, rehearsed, like they wanted the file off their desk more than they wanted justice. I knew it was wrong. Every part of me screamed that this wasn't some accident. It was the final move in a slow, calculated campaign. Karen never once reached out. No message. No concern. Not even a public statement of sympathy. In fact, 2 days after the fire, she was seen power walking through the neighborhood like nothing happened. Sunglasses on. Water bottle in hand. No remorse, no shame. The local news picked up the story by the end of the week. Disabled child rescued from house fire. Investigation ongoing, the headline read. Our interview was cautious. We didn't have proof, only suspicion, but I made it clear we believed foul play was involved. That's when things got worse. Anonymous online accounts began posting comments blaming us. Negligent parents. Exploiting their daughter for sympathy. Probably faked it for insurance. It wasn't hard to guess where that wave of vitriol was coming from. Karen had poisoned the neighborhood long before the fire, and now her influence was turning our tragedy into public spectacle. Still, we didn't stop. I hired a private investigator, an old friend of a friend, someone who didn't flinch at HOA politics or small-town corruption. He dug deep. First stop, the hydrant. It had been tampered with, but not in a way that left obvious fingerprints. The valve had been expertly jammed from the inside, too specific to be a coincidence. Then came the neighborhood security feeds. Our cameras were destroyed in the fire, but one house across the street had captured a shadowy figure entering our backyard an hour before the blaze. Hooded. About Karen's height. Still, it wasn't enough. Too dark. No clear face. Circumstantial, they'd say. But the deeper we looked, the stranger things became. The investigator pulled HOA emails through a whistleblower, a disgruntled former board member who had quietly resigned a few weeks before the fire. What we found was stunning. Karen had been actively lobbying to have us evicted under vague non-compliance rules. Dozens of emails filled with carefully chosen words like liability, disruption, and threat to harmony. She even offered to personally oversee enforcement. One email, dated 2 weeks before the fire, read, "One way or another, they won't be here much longer." That was the moment everything snapped into place. And then, the breakthrough came from the unlikeliest place, garbage. The investigator sifted through Karen's trash one early morning. It was legal, public property once on the curb. In the second bag, beneath discarded mail and a ripped dog toy, was a scorched, half-melted matchbook. It was branded with the logo of a local fireplace company, the same one that had serviced our chimney years ago. We hadn't used them in over a year. There was no reason for that matchbook to be anywhere near her home. When cross-checked with neighborhood footage, Karen had never had a fireplace installed or serviced. But we had, and the exact same matchbooks had once been inside our home, kept in a kitchen drawer. The investigator handed the evidence to the police. This time, they took it more seriously. A new detective was assigned to the case. The hydrant was re-examined. Karen was questioned. Public opinion began to shift. Neighbors started whispering again. But this time, not in her favor. The woman who once held all the power suddenly felt exposed. Her daily walk stopped. The HOA meetings were canceled. Someone left flowers outside our burn home. A note that read, "I'm sorry. I should have spoken up." The scars were everywhere, on Emily's arms, in our hearts, in the hollow echo of the life we once had. But the investigation was gaining traction. Karen could feel the walls closing in. We could feel it too. The difference was, we weren't afraid anymore. We weren't alone. And we were just getting started, because now we had something she didn't expect. The moment we filed the lawsuit, everything changed. What was once quiet sympathy from a few neighbors became a loud, bitter division. Some people applauded us, grateful that someone was finally standing up to Karen and the HOA's unchecked power. Others avoided eye contact altogether, afraid to take sides, whispering rumors behind blinds, fearing retaliation. And Karen? She lawyered up instantly. Her attorney called the suit a baseless attempt to defame a respected member of the community. But we weren't backing down. We had the matchbook. We had the security footage. We had the emails. And more than anything, we had something stronger than any of it. We had the truth and a daughter fighting for her life because of someone's hate. While Emily remained in recovery, fragile but alive, we turned our grief into purpose. We started posting everything we could on social media, screenshots, security footage stills, a timeline of events, details the news had overlooked. Our story began to go viral. Parents of disabled children shared it. Firefighters commented. Veterans, teachers, strangers from across the country flooded our inboxes with support and outrage. "This could have been my child," one mother wrote. "Burn her entire HOA to the ground," figuratively. Another said, "The truth was louder than we ever expected, and it forced people in our community to finally pay attention." The pressure mounted. The whistleblower from the HOA came forward publicly, confirming what we already knew: that Karen had been manipulating votes, bending rules, and threatening board members with personal lawsuits if they didn't go along with her vendettas. Then came the biggest break of all. Our investigator uncovered a recording, audio taken by a maintenance worker Karen had tried to bribe. She had offered him cash to disable the hydrant and remove our backyard motion sensor lights. "Just do this, and it'll be over," she'd whispered. "They'll move. Trust me." But he didn't go through with it. He kept the money and kept the proof. That recording was all the police needed. Karen was arrested in her own home, still in her bathrobe, mascara smeared from what I can only assume were tears of rage. The image of her being escorted out, hands cuffed, will never leave my mind. Not because I celebrated her downfall, but because for once, she had to answer for what she did. The charges included arson, reckless endangerment, obstruction of justice, and tampering with emergency equipment. But even that long list couldn't measure the damage she'd caused to our daughter, to our family, to the life we had before. The trial was long. The courtroom was cold, sterile, emotionless, at least at first. Karen pled not guilty. Her lawyers painted us as paranoid, desperate, even emotionally unstable. But the matchbook, the emails, the footage, and most importantly, the bribery audio, each one unraveled her mask piece by piece. And then, something unexpected happened. Emily woke up. After weeks of silence and healing, she opened her eyes. Her voice was weak, scratchy from the breathing tube. But her first question, whispered through cracked lips, was it Karen? We froze. It was the only confirmation we ever needed. She remembered. Maybe not everything, but enough. On the day of my testimony, I stood before the court and looked Karen in the eye. "We came to that neighborhood for peace," I said, "for a future, for our daughter. You turned that dream into ashes, and you watched it burn. But she didn't die. She fought, and so did we. And today, we're not here to beg for mercy. We're here to demand justice." The room was silent. Karen stared down, hands folded, lips pressed tight. Her lawyer didn't say a word. When the verdict came, guilty on all counts, I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just held my wife's hand. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about truth, about healing, about never letting someone like Karen silence another family again. We didn't get our home back, but we got justice. And justice finally spoke louder than fire. The courtroom was still, breathless, as the judge prepared to deliver the sentence. Karen sat rigidly, her face pale and unreadable for once, the arrogant smirk long gone. When the word guilty rang out for the final time, I didn't feel triumph. I felt release. The weight that had pressed on our chest for months finally cracked. She was sentenced to 18 years without parole for arson, reckless endangerment, and obstruction. She didn't look at us, not once. Not when the sentence was read. Not when she was led away in handcuffs. Not even when Emily's name was spoken aloud. Her silence was the final insult, but also her surrender. She knew, and now the world did too. The fallout rippled through the neighborhood like an earthquake. The HOA board, once blindly loyal to Karen, resigned en masse. Some claimed they'd been manipulated. Others tried to erase their part entirely. But the damage was done. The HOA was formally dissolved, and with community vote, a new neutral management firm was brought in. They knocked on our door, our temporary home, personally, apologized, offered compensation. We didn't smile, but we accepted the apology, not for them, but for closure. Rebuilding wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual. We started the long, grueling process of reconstructing our home. Every plank of wood, every wall, every window was a step back toward normal. But some things never fully heal. The scars on Emily's arms faded with time, but the fear in her eyes on stormy nights still lingers. She wakes from nightmares, sometimes calling for Max, calling for us. And yet she's strong, stronger than any of us. In therapy one afternoon, she said softly, "The fire didn't take my smile." And just like that, I broke. My wife and I cried in that room, holding her as if our lives depended on it, because in many ways they did. She's walking again now with help. Her voice is softer, but steady. Her laughter returned, hesitant at first, then full. Every time she smiles, it feels like defiance, like light refusing to be dimmed. She's my miracle, our miracle. And even though we still carry grief like a shadow, it no longer leads us. It follows us, distant and quiet. We lost our home, our safety, our faith in the people around us. But we never lost each other. And in the end, that's what saved us. Not the evidence, not the trial, not even the verdict. It was love, unyielding, relentless, defiant. Love that held us through the fire, through the hate, through the silence. We lost everything, but not each other, and that made all the difference. If you've ever felt powerless, like the system was built to ignore you, like the voices of the vulnerable didn't matter, this story is for you. It's not just about fire or corruption or a cruel neighbor. It's about standing up when the world expects you to sit down. It's about refusing to be silent when silence costs lives. What happened to our family could happen to anyone. And too often it does behind closed doors, under the weight of fear, shame, and isolation. But here's the truth. You are not alone. Your voice matters. Your pain matters. And you have the right to fight back. We stood our ground, not because we were fearless, but because love gave us no other choice. So, let this be your reminder. Stand up, speak out, and hold them accountable. No one has the right to steal your peace and walk away unpunished. Subscribe to HOA Karen for more real stories of injustice, courage, and the people who rise against it. Because silence fuels evil, and your voice might be the one that finally stops it. You are stronger than they ever imagined, and it's time the world knew it. Police Starlight, this isn't just a story, it's a wake-up call. If this made your heart race, your fists clench, or your soul ache, then don't scroll past. Stop sign, don't let another child suffer in silence. Don't let evil hide behind fake rules and quiet neighborhoods. Backhand index pointing right, hit that subscribe button now, because HOA Karen isn't just a channel, it's a movement. A movement for justice, for truth, for every family who's been pushed to the edge and told to stay quiet. Collision like, share, comment, let the world know we will not be silent. We will not back down. We will fight. Loudspeaker, this is your moment to stand up, because if not now, then when? If not you, then who?